This week in comic books, we're going to shoehorn a bunch of characters into a known storyline with popularity behind it, but the other characters we don't care about. Over in DC, we find out that Superman is, well, just way too understanding and sad. It's sad. Also, in Punchline, it's kind of like an onion. It's layered and it made me cry and gave me indigestion. Yeah, that happened. Over in Sort of X, we find out that marriage is, well, it's a competition. And that's a horrible, horrible thought. All that and maybe some good things about comic books coming up right after the intro. Roll it. Hey, what's going on, you wonderful weirdos? I'm Pocan Joe, and as always, you're super cool for swinging by. If this is your first time on the channel, I'm basically a middle-aged man that still reads comic books.
Don't let him suck you in. He's not funny.
And like a true nerd, I take notes on him to see if there's anything of importance or interesting in it, and then I try to regurgitate it to you in the quickest format that I possibly can. So without further ado, let's skidoo.
What kind of crackhead terminology is that?
We're going to jump right into DC this week. So DC had some interesting stuff come out to help the shopper make some decisions on where to spend their money. So what did we do? We brought out Lobo. And I'll be honest with you, this was kind of cool. So the whole multiverse thing, this is part of the whole Doom Metal. It's a tie-in. Is it overly relevant to the story? It may be actually surprising. This may be one of the tie-ins that actually probably more relevant. We get some more of that story of Lex Luthor and Lobo and their kind of connection on why they're doing. We also find kind of like a mixed version in the Batman Dark Universe of a Lobo-style Batman as well, and how them two battle it out. Super thick book, well worth the price. I went with that cover right there because, well, it's Lobo. It's kind of cool, right?
Well, it's awesome. It's exciting.
So definitely good read. Not my pick of the week, but nevertheless still good. We jump right into Punchline. And you know how current year, right?
I hate the new generation of coolness out there.
You constantly hear from one side, oh, they're just virtue signaling or playing up sympathy or what. Well, let's pretend that that really does happen for just a second. What would it look like? It's basically in this story. The problem is it's just a little too far-fetched. It's a little over the top. I'm not saying it was a horrible book, but we've already gotten an origin story from her, just kind of fed into that origin story, but is it all a lie? We don't really know. She's running a podcast, trying to get sympathy, causing people to come together in groupthink and try to advocate to save her life, if you will, for all of her dealings and her involvement in with the Joker. It's interesting. It's interesting. I'll give it that. But again, it was just a little too over the top. Some subtlety would have probably done better in this book. Moving on, Detective Comics. So we get another Bat Family story in here, and I've mentioned before, I'm like, why do we have so many Bat people now? There's one thing that cannot happen. You cannot say the Batman universe family thing is not diverse, because legitimately it seems like everybody's a Batman in this book.
Filled my quota in 1982.
We get a little bit more insight into why Robin he broke away and what he's getting involved in, and a name that keeps popping up in old case files. And Robin looks like he's going to be diving into that, saying that the old man is slipping. All the Bat family fall into a trap because there's this vigilante or masked person thing led by the Mirror, who wears a mask, of course. And they kind of trap them and try to dispatch them, if you will, destroy them. But of course, they just, they're bats. They fly off. All in all, it was okay. It's one of those in-between issues, I think is what we call it over at Blaster Stash It. By the way, Blaster Stash It, check it out Sunday night, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on the YouTubes. But I just felt like this was a heavy, heavy narrative, heavy dialogue about a bunch of our feelings, their feelings, need to do better, Batman say it again, blah, blah, blah. Not a whole lot of action, not a whole lot of things that drive us to want to read a Batman comic book. Instead, it was like a Batman soap opera is the best way to put it. All right, so in Superman, if you haven't been reading this, I kind of don't blame you. But Samar and Superman are battling it out. And Superman's trying not to fight this guy because he cannot communicate with him. And they battle all the way to his universe, where Samir takes this as an opportunity that Superman's surrendering to him in some way, shape, or form. 2 issues now. The second issue, where Superman's just basically getting it handed to him, and he keep mind talking himself into this kind of simp. I just need to understand.
Don't do that. Don't be rude.
Just talk to me. You know, I don't know, man. I don't know. It's a little bit far fetched. Also from DC, this is turning out to be kind of interesting. This is that American Vampire, 1976. It takes place in 1976, dealing with a vampire, or what used to be a vampire, trying to rob a train, secret organization hunt monsters, and then a buddy cop team in here as well. This is just fun reading with like hints of treasure hunting, heist, kind of taking place in that 1970s groovy type era, you know, the bicentennial, where everything was just a little bit cooler.
Yes, it is.
Than the rest of the time. Super cool book, interesting things in here. Very graphic, not for children, but I'll tell you what, it is a fun read, and I'll keep following this just a little while longer until it gets annoying, because I got a feeling it's coming, because they introduced a character, and I'm like, wow, I don't care about that person.
I know that makes you feel good about your life.
And there's probably more of it coming. So all in all, it was an okay read. Hopefully it doesn't get weird. Moving on to Marvel. So Marvel was interesting this week. So
I'm sure your sense of humor will serve you well in this situation.
how do I preface this? Well, let's not preface it. I think I did that in the intro. Let's just talk about it. So Taskmaster 1 came out. Now I like Taskmaster as a villain because it's a great way to constantly have a negative to a hero inside of a story frame, right? So negative being his opposite, but being equal in power and everything else because he can mimic fighting styles or whatever. We kind of open up with this kind of hinky entrepreneurial type
You judgmental prick.
thing that he's doing. He's all about the business. We get it. Apparently, Black Widow's chasing him down. So now we got Taskmaster and we got Black Widow. We all know the movie's coming out, so we're going to streamline those 2 characters. So earlier in the year, we were introduced to some other superhero teams like the Wakanda Spy Agency, whatever they're calling themselves, the Tiger Agency, you know, for the Atlantis Attacks, you know, story run. And then we had Coulson, right? Phil Coulson and his little team of over-American superheroes in the DC area. And it didn't seem like those comic books were really kind of attracting to people. So what do we got to do? We're going to need to remind you that these other comic books exist, and we're just going to cram them in here. So this entire run is just going to be a reminder that these other comic books exist.
There he goes again.
You may say, well, that's heavy speculation. No, they told you in here that is going to happen, because Taskmaster has to go watch these particular people that are head of these agencies. He's got to watch them in person, which normally he can do, you know, over the TV or something like that, right? But no, for some reason, some unexplained reason, he's got to go see these people in person. So we're going to be reintroduced to these characters that nobody ever really cared about because somebody can't take a hint.
That's how it works.
When your sales are down. So shame on you. And I really need to start reading the synopsis of comic books before I pick them up. Okay, so Marvel Zombies Resurrection. This was okay. It's an okay ending. If I have one pet peeve, apparently Franklin Richards, you know, Mr. Fantastic's son, apparently he was embedded with Warlock, the synthetic robot character from New Mutants.
I don't understand what you're saying right now. Can you speak how people speak?
At some point, we get a quick flashback of that. And at some point, you would have thought that would have been hinted to us in some way, shape, or form. Maybe more so when, you know, the entire team was on a base full of robots scanning them and everything else. They did take them away, but they never really explained why. And then they tried to do a moment, right? And it was just not there. But all in all, it was a good story. I really like the Gambit handgun. That was great. Destroying the hive in this. They destroyed the zombie hive in this. It was good. And we left it with somewhat of a cliffhanger with ominous tones that maybe something else may be coming down the road in this particular universe.
So this is good news.
So all in all, it was okay. Just some silliness, but you're gonna get that in a Marvel zombie story inside of a comic book. I think that's fair to say. Pick of the week. Strange Academy. As childish as this book is, it's fantastic, and the world that they've built around it is great. Also, we get an interesting conversation in here between Brother Voodoo and Doctor Strange about nature and nurture is really what they were discussing in this. Do we make these students into what we mold them into what we need to, or do we just tell them what they are and what they're capable of and let them be who they need to be?
These things are very tricky.
Because they obviously have somebody in here that can turn into a very, very powerful villain. Manu's son. I think they're calling him Doyle in this one. Go figure. And apparently he's got a little bit of a temper, and there's been some visions of him, or prophecy, kind of linking him to destroying a bunch of people. That's another interesting concept that they brought up in here too. The whole destiny versus prophecy thing. How does that work and with these young kids? Because a lot of future there to be had. The characters are great, the dialogue great, the artwork is perfect in this, and our heroes finally meet the Hollow face to face. So it's very interesting. And one of them, they're literally calling the One. I love the play on, over in Asgard, there's like 4 the Ones. It's
Okay, I gotta admit that was humorous.
it's great because it's an overused term in comic books and in movies anyway. So they had a great time with it, and it allowed us to kind of explore the whole beginning argument with them being trapped by the Hollow now as well. Are these kids? Is it the responsibility of the school to make them good guys, villains, let them be who they need to be? What is their role for the first class, ultimately? It's an interesting concept, and it's a fun read, all in all, as whimsical as it is. Next, so here's where things start getting weird. So I've dedicated myself to reading the X of Swords, right? And most of its tie-ins, but mostly the main story. So we finally get launched off in a battle here, and we find out that it's Betsy Braddock, Captain America, the female, and the Unbeatable, Iska the Unbeatable. And she lives up to her name. It's not just a moniker, it's her superpower. She's unbeatable. They found this out in the dinner. Also, lots of dinners in this complete run here, like issue and issue. Just people sitting and eating. That seems to be a theme in comic books now. That's
I know, it's lame, right?
on a regular basis. But anyway, after the dinner, the next match starts the next day, and spoiler warning, the Unbeatable lives up to her title. Just totally shatters her, literally, like she broke like stained glass. It was awesome. Now, you may remember in the last issue when I talked about this book, Wolverine stabbed the little white witch lady. Well, apparently that didn't really happen because magic and mind BS stuff, right? She gave him a vision of what would actually happen if he did murder her, and apparently, like all of Earth would be overrun with the otherworldly people. So, yeah, that didn't happen. Somebody got poisoned. It was Cypher, and we find out that the white sword guy is actually somewhat noble. He sees poisoning as a cowardly act and kind of chastised his team for it too, and saved Cypher. Cypher becomes a very interesting character in the very next comic book. Because as I said in the beginning, somebody over at Marvel thought that, and oh, Lordy, I called this. I knew it wouldn't just be like one-on-one battles of sword fights, because that would actually have been kind of cool.
It's a dick move.
No, it's all kinds of other contests. And apparently this contest, Cypher has to marry Blood Moon, who speaks her own language that Cypher cannot translate. And that's kind of a superpower, right? So he finds her absolutely fascinating and goes along with it. And they get married.
Yeah.
Ta-da. That was the big awakening in Excalibur for the Sword of X run. Yep. Jubilee shows up. She wants to cause some trouble. And the White Witch is like, I'm going to own your dragon now. I don't even know when she got the dragon. I don't know much. I haven't been reading a whole lot of Excalibur. So the complete reference to why the Jubilee and this dragon are together escapes me. But I do know one thing for sure. It was not interesting. And this was just weak at best.
It's getting a little dark.
And the art in this one, I don't know who's doing the art in this one, but it's really not that good. It's just, no. All right, moving on with the Sword of X theme, we get a couple of more competitions that happen. So Wolverine has to battle the Summoner, right? And what we find out there is their competition was the first one to death. So Wolverine takes this as, I need to kill the person. He does, and Summoner ends up winning. Literally, we're just making shit up as we go now. It's just incoherent thoughts and competitions. As another little twist in the game, I guess it was supposed to come off as, Wolverine and Storm have to compete against each other. Mind you, they're on the same team, in a drinking contest.
This doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah, that happened. It's stupid. And then over on the Otherworldly, two of them, War and her ex-lover, they have to fight too, but because Wolverine and this guy made a deal, Wolverine has to fight in his honor, and the first one that takes off a limb wins. Like, it's not even to the death. So Wolverine chops off War's hand, winning the competition. Because... what is happening? Yeah. Also, in one of these god-awful stories, Magic, the girl that likes to use her sword and fight, she has to arm wrestle a alligator monster pog character. Yeah. And who rhymes when he speaks. Like the demon. He kind of does stuff like that. And, of course, she loses because she's like 90 pounds. And this thing was like, I don't know, a ton. At this point, the entire storyline just feels like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if... blah. And they just kind of threw that in there.
That's how it's done, son.
That's it. That's my comic book review this week. There was no independents at my comic book store that I was interested in. The number ones that came out that were at least delivered there. So that's it. Hey, if you haven't checked it out yet, definitely check out Blaster Stash at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Friday nights, right here on the old YouTubes. Myself, Spectacular Spider Grandpa, who is out of the hospital, and I hope he's feeling better. And Huey's Comics, and who knows, maybe you. We had the live chat. Let us know what comic books you read. Get some other opinions on it. Let's have a middle-aged book club about comic books. That sounds fun. Also, keep your eyes open if you haven't liked or subscribed yet from the Evil Lair, my private workshop Evil Lair. I'm currently working on making a more updated version of the 10 Rings of the Mandarin since the movie's coming out and everything. They're really coming along. I should have that video out soon. That's November's project. Once a month, I'm going to try to do a project in there. And definitely keep your eyes open. We may be getting Drunk Ralphie back to do some more psychology. Oh, I hope that happens.
Are you serious?
Oh, happy day. All right, guys. Other than that, I got nothing else. So I'll catch you all on the flip. Take it easy. Bye.